Hey folks, this is Rob with you again, and I just want to tell you, this is something that's been near and dear to my heart, and something that obviously in this culture, this day and age, is something that's hugely contentious, which is the topic of sex and sexuality. And Genesis 2:24, the second book of the Bible, makes it very clear God's intention for human sexuality, because it says, "And for this reason," this is Genesis 2:24, "and for this reason a man shall leave his father and mother and be united with his wife, and the two shall become one flesh." Now that one flesh, of course, means sexually, but it's an all-encompassing, right? So they become one sexually, spiritually, emotionally, psychologically, mentally. Like it's a whole package deal. You become one in every sense of the word one, right? One in sexually, psychologically, physically, emotionally, mentally. Like you're one, right? You're bonded together like glue. And and there's many verses in the Bible that condemn homosexuality. Leviticus 18, 22, Romans 1, 26, 20, Romans 1, 26, 27. So there's ones in Corinthians, there's one in Galatians. And the Bible does condone homosexuality, but the reason it does is because it's an assault on your own design, right? Because God designed men and women to be sexually intimate. The reason we know this is, to be blunt, that a penis fits into a vagina. A penis does not fit into another penis, and a vagina does not fit into another vagina. But a penis and a vagina fit, which therefore obviously makes it natural that heterosexual relationships within the context of a marriage are what God's designed for human sexuality is. Now, that being said, heterosexuality doesn't leave us off the hook, because fornication is still not accepted in biblical context as human sexuality. So, what the framework that I just gave us from Genesis 2:24: leave your father and mother, be united with your wife, the two shall become one flesh. So, a heterosexual union in the context of a marriage is the only bounded relationship that God says that's the one you can have sex in. So there's no fornication, there's no homosexuality, there's no adultery. I mean, I'm not saying there's things that don't exist in the real world, because they absolutely do, but I'm saying God says they're out of bounds. Because homosexuality is going against your own design. Because you're created, says in the book of Romans, the man was made for the woman was made for the man. It's very obvious. You can't procreate in a same-sex relationship. That alone should tell you that's not natural. So I don't know why this is even contested. Oh, well, okay, I do, because people love sin, but it's anti-logic to think that homosexuality is normal, right? It's not logical. And the rates for suicidal ideation, depression, and anxiety among the LGBT community are through the roof. And people say, well, that's because of people like me who are bigoted and LGBT haters. And listen, like every other video I've done, I don't hate anyone. I don't hate anyone who practices homosexuality or some sort of deviation from their created sexual norm, what God has instilled to us in the very heart and soul of every man and woman. That is, the man was made for the woman, and the woman was made for the man. And it doesn't get any more blatantly obvious than that, the verse I just read from Genesis 2:24. But again, it goes back to that one of the verses in Gospel of John, right? Where the Gospel of John referring to Jesus, the light has shone in the darkness. But what? The darkness loved, but the people love darkness rather than light. Why? Because their deeds were evil. So the same is true today, right? We live in a really evil world, where evil is rampant. And to say that I don't think homosexuality is healthy, and the stats prove it up. Again, people in the LGBT plus community, suicidal ideation, depression, and anxiety are through the roof the LGBT plus community. Now, again, people say, well, it's because of people like me. I hate people who are homosexuals, and I hate, and I'm a bigot, and blah, blah, blah. Like that. This is bullshit, okay? I don't hate people, but I'm not going to stand here and say what you're doing is okay when I know that God has made it very clear in His Word and through common sense and observation that homosexuality just doesn't work. It doesn't work. It not only does it prevent life, it destroys life, because you can hurt yourself. You can get like the LCO2, the rate of STIs in the LGBT plus community is also through the roof. I don't have the stats on hand, but listen, everything I'm saying is statistically accurate. Which isn't to say, of course, that everyone in a heterosexual relation is doing well. Of course, that's the case. There's a lot of unhappy people who are in heterosexual relationships. But the point is, homosexuality is a deviation from your God's created intention for human sexuality, and there's just no escaping that. And so when you go up fighting against God's design for your sexuality, you're only going to end up hurting yourself and anyone who end up practicing those kind of deviant sexual acts with, because it's deviant. You're deviating from your created norm, which is if you're a man to be with a woman, and if you're a woman to be with a man. It's that simple. Now, I know that the overwhelming majority of people on this planet are straight and actually will gravitate towards someone of their opposite sex because that's how God has designed and wired us to think. I'm a man. I find women incredibly sexually attractive because God has wired me to be attracted to females and females to be attracted to me and men. That's just the way it works. It's normal. Again, and the reason we know it's normal is because our genitals align, right? Our genitals fit together. If you're a man, your genitals will fit into a woman. And if you're a woman, a man's genitals will fit into you. This is just basic common sense biology, right? This is like, you don't need a master's to know that this is just the way the world works, folks. If it weren't for people having sex, you wouldn't be around, and neither would I. So, and by sex, I mean, heterosexual sex. I can't believe we're living in a day and age where we actually have to qualify that now, but here we are. Now, the other thing we need to qualify is God's intention for sexuality. Okay, so God has two main intentions for human sexuality. The one is pleasure, and the other is procreation. So the first, I think, is that we need to know is that God actually created sex to be a pleasurable thing, and that's we have to be. Listen, we have to. I think Christians have to stop being so bloody weird about sex. They say, look, God created sex, God created orgasms, God created our sex parts, and God created sex to be a pleasurable experience between men and women. Now, of course, the other reason for sex is procreation. So it's a pleasurable thing that can bring about the procreation of children, of course. So those are the two main reasons for heterosexual sex: pleasure and procreation. The species would thrive and flourish, and that we would have pleasure in the act of having sex. It's a beautiful gift in marriage, but if it's outside of marriage, it's not good or healthy. Now, I know as a single man at the moment, it's not always easy to maintain sexual discipline over your impulses, because I want to be with a woman, I want to have sex with a woman, I want to be married, but I know all these things take time, right? And I have to, and I've just gone through I'm not looking for sympathy, okay? I'm just saying, but truthfully, I have just gone through a breakup with a woman I was with for 10 years. And I read it's one of the reasons that we broke up is we were just were together too long and not married. When we were not immoral, we fornicated. So listen, I'm not fornicating more, but I'm just saying I did do that stuff, so I know what it's like, and it's easy to fall into that trap, right? But the thing is, you won't feel satisfied. Actually, it's married people statistically that they'll stay together the longest. And statistically, they'll have a better sex life than common law. Speaking from experience, because I've been married and I've done common law, and the married thing didn't want to work, but that was my fault because I cheated. I was an idiot. But there's no guilt in sex when you're married. When you're common law, you have the conviction. I think part of me was like, well, we may be common law, we may be married, but at least we're monogamous, right? So you feed yourself that crap in order to justify the feeding the desires of the flesh. Well, okay, but I'm married under the law, I'm common law. So according to the law, I am a married man. I don't need a certificate from the government. I've heard people say, and people have all sorts of ideas. But one argument I've heard is that I don't need a certificate. Look at Adam and Eve; they were married under God. Yeah, but we're not living. I mean, if you're only the two people, who else is going to marry you, right? It's just you and Eve. So I think that's a pretty weak argument. No, other than that, it's a good idea to have a ring on your finger so you can tell the rest of the world, I'm taken. Okay. Anyways, I think that's enough for now. Peace out, Brother Rob.